special review of Monster Sanctuary. So just a bit of context here. So I actually got a code for this game prior to the release on Switch, and then did a review on Vooks.net. They're really great guys over there. So check that out. It was fun. I hadn't written something creative or like, in this vein for, I don't even know how long, maybe decade. And yeah, it turns out that this game then got released on Game Pass. So you were also able to play this game, and you've played through it. Is that correct?
So I haven't beaten it yet. I was planning on it, and then I got hit with a curveball of the 12 Days of Christmas last night. So the 3 hours I was planning to play more of Monster Sanctuary, I dedicated to that. I'd say I'm very far in, but also I don't know. It's hard to tell with this game exactly. Like, I've completed probably about 6 or 7 of the areas, if you kind of think of it like broken up into zones.
Yep.
And like evolved stuff. Like, I'm pretty far into it, but yeah, I'm keen to hear what you think.
Yeah, so like, and we should probably provide the context. So this game, indie game coming out of Moi Rai Studios or Games, just a two-man operation or two-person operation from Germany. Pretty incredible scope for a game, and it seemed like they only started really working on it a couple of years ago. So very, very impressive game that they were able to release and put out in relatively short span of time, and quite a high level of polish from my perspective. In terms of the game itself, I think like simplistically, I look at this game and go, I take the base really is like Pokemon. And more like the battle mechanics from like traditional RPGs to some degree, with a combo system, put it on a 2D platform perspective, but then overlay. And I think the clever thing is like overlay Metroidvania components to it, but using the monsters themselves to unlock the rest of the map, which is that Metroidvania type thing. And you only really get those monsters in certain areas, and then that means you can backtrack and go to different areas. I mean, would you add anything else to that sort of overall what the hell is this game perspective?
Look, I think that nails it, and I think you're right on the money, and I'm glad you said it, that it takes the idea of Pokemon but doesn't play anything like Pokemon, in the sense that the battles do not play out like Pokemon battles.
No.
But the idea of, okay, I've got a collection of monsters, and you can say, okay, out of the 30 plus that I've collected so far, I'm going to work on this core group of 6. And you'll have 3 at a time, and then some battles you'll be able to swap between. Like, it's basically, you can swap between them at any time, but some of them are set up specifically so that, it's like 6-on-6 battles at some point, but you're only ever using 3 at once. So.
And before we go into like, deep dive and different aspects of the game, it was kind of interesting as well, because we normally don't give a point score on our podcast. And when we review things, like, if anything, we do that whole scaling. It's like, on that spectrum, how close is it to like the perfect of that sort of genre? And I'd probably still put it into the monster catcher genre, like if I had to put it somewhere. But because Vooks, it's like a Metacritic partner, it will go to Metacritic. It has to be a 10-point scale minimum. So it's like, oh God, like I actually found it hard because, just jumping the gun, like, to me, this game, I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10 if I could. But that's not how Vooks works. Like, that site, they only do 7 or an 8. And I'd probably go like if I go even more granular, I'd probably go like 76, 77 for this game. Like if you were in my shoes, what number would you give it? It's all subjective, right?
I don't know. I reckon so far this is probably a 9.
Oh wow! I was just having a swig of my black coffee when you said that.
I
Really?
think this game is awesome.
Out of the old school IGN, like out of 100, you would have given it 90.
I love this game.
Like,
I think this game
wow.
this game shocked me by how good it is.
Yeah, I agree.
I was like, what is this game? Like, how... The name of the game is fitting, right? You can't say it's not fitting, but at the same time, it's also something that people... And like, I really hope this game blows up, because it deserves to be played. This game is awesome.
Yeah, you know what I hope happens with this game? So I agree. Like, I gave it an 8 out of 10, essentially, like in my review. So 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 for you. Like, Good game. You can't argue that, right? And I have to say, like, given the context of this is just by two people, like, I just can't get over how good the game is for that as two people. And there's, like, the thing that I how do I got to phrase this right, but it's a bit of a shame because I think the trailer's good, but like, when you play a game and sometimes the trailer's like, oh, well, this trailer's kind of hooked me into this game, but the game doesn't live up to it. I feel like it's a reverse for this game. Like the trailer's good and everything, but the game itself, when you start playing it, it's like, oh man, this is really like addictive when you get into the game loop. And yeah, like I was just like playing it all the time randomly, like even to the point where my wife was like, "Hey, I thought you finished reviewing that game. Like, why are you still playing it?" I'm like, "Well, it's a good game. I like it. Like, why wouldn't I keep playing it?"
I definitely have some thoughts on some of its downsides so far, but overall, like this, it as you said, it's super addictive. Like any good Metroidvania is addictive by nature, but when you add
Yeah.
in like really really robust RPG mechanics, like some of the I love what they've done with so like a lot of RPGs, obviously you have your skill trees and things, but
Yeah.
they've really kind of I think they've knocked it out of the park with this. And as a very as a person that plays a lot of RPGs, I love games that focus a lot on buffs and debuffs. It's one of my
Oh,
favorite. It's one of my favorite things. So you've got games like South Park: Stick of Truth, Earthlock. What's another game that is very focused on it? Final Fantasy 13 is very focused on debuffs. I love that because it's a strategic layer that like you can't just mash through this game. This
and
game actually takes a lot of thinking.
that's what I was gonna say. That like, as opposed to Stick of Truth, where I haven't finished that game, but I got pretty well advanced in it. I felt like the whole buff debuff thing, it wasn't really stopping me progressing at that point in the game. Whereas this game, I really feel like I had to get my head around the whole buff and debuff thing, and am I going to poison them? Am I going to burn them? So I get a little bit of extra damage after each turn. Like it became
But
essential
but
to get my head around that.
yeah, to me, it's not just the matter of applying. It's also then each monster will have um, certain skills that you can upgrade or things as part of the tree that will then deal additional damage to people with those debuffs, or it will stack multiple times, or it will. There's just it's really deep in regards to that specific mechanic that I really appreciate. The downside to that though is that I could see some people struggling with this game. Like this game
Oh, in
actually,
terms of the difficulty.
yeah, I think that for people that especially aren't, maybe younger players and things, because it's a game that would appeal to a wide variety of people, and especially when you start talking about monster raising and stuff, then it can also skew a little bit lower if people go, oh, it's kind of like Pokemon. Um, this game can get tough, so I think that
Hmm.
there's I'm enjoying it, but I'm also well versed in that stuff. So I don't know if everyone's going to have as fun of an experience I've had so far in that regard.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point. Like one day I really want to make a game myself, and when I make a game, it'll be for me. It won't be for anyone else, really. Like you put it out there and then it becomes everyone else's. But in the creation process, I feel like I want to make something that I would enjoy. But as a business person, and if I was working with this team, there's quite a few things I would change in what they do and how they've like put this game out there that I think could just exalt it to another level. And I think you've hit on a really good point because when I started playing this game, so I'm reviewing it, and yeah, it's been in Steam early access, but hasn't had like a lot of people playing it. And I really hope now that it's on Game Pass, and I hope that similar to Among Us, I don't think we'll get to that level, obviously, but similar to Among Us, I think that this kind of game could get discovered by a streamer and then really get popular through that, especially if someone's like a Pokemon streamer, like usually plays like the mainline Pokemon games or something like that, or Monster Hunter, like those type of people that play those games. I think it would really be the best showcase for this game. But just that kind of editing thing, like number one, and like maybe let's just go through, given that we've given it a lot of praise, some of the downsides. You know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but when I was playing through, I don't remember it having a level of difficulty. It was just the game, like you get into it. And to me, I think you're 100% spot on. I feel like people will bounce off this game because you kind of get to a point where it's like, well, you get really stuck if you're not playing the game the right way.
Mm.
And it's a lot of work to get back up if you've stuffed up the way you've been playing it. Like the way you level up and everything like that. You know how I was saying to you, the way you level up, you got to be kind of conscious of it because you can kind of catch yourself out. Otherwise, you can essentially go backwards in terms of if you're leveling your party the wrong way.
Mm.
And yeah, like the whole debuffs, buffs. I feel like this game would benefit so much if it just had a casual mode. Like when you started it, it was just like normal and casual or something like that, you know? Like I don't even think that would take away from the game if you did that.
Yeah, the thing I'm of two minds about that stuff always. I think that it would have helped this game. But at the same time, it's obviously been built with that strategic design in mind of
Mm,
the battle system, and like the talked about the skills and the debuffs and stuff, and to kind of to say to do casual mode where a lot of that stuff doesn't really matter and you can kind of brute force your way through. I think kind of kills what's special about the game, but at the same time,
mm,
I think that it I think it needed more mechanics, as you said. If someone has raised a party, and I kind of fell into this trap at the start of, okay, these are my three core monsters I really like. I'm just going to worry about these guys for now. And
yeah.
while your other monsters will certainly level up, I wasn't caring about them much. I wasn't even using
Mm,
skill points. And then suddenly you hit some battles where and elements. And one thing we didn't say, so with debuffs and everything ready, but just like this is where Pokemon influence is important. The elemental types are super important in this game, and there's really good
yeah.
quality of life that they do put in where it will just immediately tell you if it's going to be, like super effective or ineffective when you go to
Yeah.
do the attack. So really good. They've designed the hell out of like a lot of that stuff, which is great. But suddenly I've got a party where I get to this one boss and I'm like, man, I need to actually like go spend the time because your monsters have equipment as well. So that's actually
Yeah.
really unique. I like that,
There's so many mechanics in this game
but
for
then
such a small game.
but then you need to
It's
go, okay,
crazy.
so I need to have 6 monsters at minimum at all times that have decent equipment and accessories, and that I've also like gone through the time to build out the skill trees. And you can automatically change equipment from one monster to another. So if you go like me, where I've probably got about 9 monsters at the moment, I'm kind of cycling between, and like depending on the zones will have monsters that have elemental affinities. Okay, I need to make sure I've got people of this type in while I'm exploring through this zone, so then I'll cycle in that 6 and stuff. But it can be tough, and honestly, probably my least favorite thing about the game is that even in battles where I feel like I'm set up well for it, some of the fights can drag. Like some of them
Oh
go for
yeah.
ages, and
Yeah.
it's just so. I think that some of the enemies, like the regular mobs, just needed to be less HP sponges. Even when I'm doing like effective attacks and debuffing them, stacking bleed 10 times on them, and it just still can take ages. I understand that for bosses, or they call them champion monsters, but that does sometimes take a while.
Yeah, and especially when regular mobs have like healing properties. So you're like knocking them out, and then they're like, oh, they're coming back and healing the rest of the party. It's like, oh my god, and you can't fast forward or skip their attacks. I understand maybe you don't skip yours, but there's a lot of quality of life. And again, I gave it an 8 out of 10. You gave it a 9 out of 10. This is a good game. It's a really, really good game actually. And if you have Game Pass, you should play this. Like, jump on and play it. It's good fun. It just, yeah, there's just a few things like that. And one thing I want to touch on, and I didn't touch on in my review, and I thought a lot about it, was the soundtrack. Now, I do actually like the music in this game, but I'm not a huge fan of it once it's played over and over and over again. And it didn't hit me well once I'd been hearing it, for hours, because it felt very repetitive, and it felt like that type of music that grates like after a while. Personally, it's a subjective thing, I guess, but as opposed to Pokemon, I could have that music on all the time and that never bothers me, or Zelda, or and it's probably an unfair comparison obviously, but How did that hit you? Or were you listening to a podcast when you were grinding through this game?
So no, so I actually like the music, but the music feels like it's a mishmash of so many games to me. There's a certain zone that just reminds me so much of Super Metro music. There's a zone that reminds me so much of
Yes.
Minecraft music. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, if I like it, but it doesn't feel cohesive in that sense.
Yes.
And
Yes. I think that's a really good way to say it.
just one mention about that before I forget about that battle speed. The first thing people should do in this game is go in the options and turn the battle speed up to max, like 2 times.
Oh, wait, are you kidding me that there's an option for
Yes,
that?
there is an option.
I don't think it has it on the Switch.
Well, it'd surprise me if it's not on the Switch. It's on the Xbox version. But yeah,
I'm actually gonna turn my Switch on right
you
now
can
to
do
check. That is gonna annoy me so much if that is there, and I didn't know that.
It's like double speed or something. Yeah. Because
I'm literally booting up my Switch while you're talking about
that's
this.
the first thing I always do is
Ah,
because especially I did the first few battles. I'm like, man, these enemy attacks are taking a while. I'm gonna check, and yeah, battle speed was an option. So,
dude, I'm gonna like this is gonna be my live reaction. Keep going. I mean, this is where your expertise in RPGs and all that kind of stuff, you know.
I mean, options are in every game. It's not just RPG.
You know, I'm just joking around, but
So far I'm really liking it. I haven't finished it yet, unlike you. I'm keen to know what the end game or the extra challenges are like in terms of difficulty. I will be playing through and completing this twice. So,
oh, you are.
well, because there's a PC achievement list as well as an Xbox achievement. So,
Man, you really like this game. I'm glad. I didn't know how it hit you.
I think it's great. As soon as I saw those skill trees and saw what's in them, not just the fact that the skill trees, but the fact that they had like any RPG that has a bleed debuff is wins me over straight away. Bleed is like my favorite status effect in any, whether or not it's Dark Souls or, as I mentioned before, Earthlock and of course with South Park Stick of Truth, you had the famous one there with Kyle doing the bleed attacks and stuff. But
yeah, no,
you found it yet?
yeah, no, it's just loading now. It's options. Oh my god, combat speed. And it's weird. The combat speed is by default 1.25. Oh, that's like so annoying to me. Like it actually, to be fair though, like it actually is gonna oh, there's an alternate battle theme as well. I should listen to that. Oh my god, that's like super annoying to be honest. But that's cool. I'm actually more inclined to play this game, like and keep going back to it. So like I was talking to you about it. I'm kind of like debating whether to try to 100% this game, because there's a lot in this game, man. There's a lot in this game.
Please do, so you can tell me the tips and tricks for beating like the hard battles and stuff.
Yeah, I like honestly, I think like this game is like a 50-hour game if you 100% it. It's a pretty long game. Like it actually shocked me. Probably longer for me because of the battle thing that I just learnt.
Well, a lot of people
won't
go and change those options, so you've got to assume that for some people it's going to take the same amount of time.
Well, and I've never reviewed a game formally, or whatever you want to call it, but I thought it'd be fair to just play it the way they've presented it, rather than tweak it like crazy at the start. And I probably didn't think to go back and check that thoroughly enough.
There's one quality of life that I wish it had. It doesn't really make sense for most of the game, but I wish there was an auto battle for the weak mob.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
Where it just chooses the first option that you've put, because the game is great that it allows you within the battle to reorganize the moves of your monsters, which is really great because there's times when it's going to be a long fight and you want to set it up so that it'll always be the first option and things. But there's times when
Oh, I didn't even know that. Wait. How do you do that?
So when you're in the battle, you can rearrange the moves.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm just like telling you everything about it. Did you know?
You're an RPG
Did you know
expert.
there's secret walls that you can break?
Shut up. You know what? One thing I think people wouldn't know naturally playing this game is that you can switch the monsters. So you have a party of 6, but you have a 3v3 battle, and most mobs are only 3 that you can actually switch out your party with other monsters.
That
Because I have seen other people talk about that. They go, "Oh, I only realized that late in the game
that whole
that I could do
menu
that."
is really hidden until you realize it's there. You
Yeah,
just literally press left, but it doesn't seem like it's a menu. And
it looks like symbols to the things that you're
yeah,
actually
but like
selecting. Yeah,
using items and everything in there. So and I also didn't know they. I mean, you get the material, so I should have assumed, but I didn't talk to everyone in the actual hideout, that like your hub area,
yeah.
and so I didn't realize you could upgrade equipment
Oh,
until
okay.
like very far in.
And again, like this game, I think the fact that we're both learning stuff about the game live, the game is deep, man. There's a lot going on in this game. And I just wanted to loop to the Metroidvania component of that, because so like you're definitely like a huge RPG fan. I'm a huge Metroidvania fan. Maybe I'll go after you. Like, how did you feel? Like, number one, do you feel like this is a Metroidvania? How does that come to life? How good is it as a Metroidvania? If it
It's
is, what are your
it's
thoughts on it?
100% a Metroidvania. This
Yeah,
is
agree, agree.
it's yeah, it's basically it's Super Metro with turn-based battles. You're getting new items that change your movement options. You're finding secret walls. You're
Mm,
unlocking shortcuts that connect back to previous areas. You're backtracking to get optional items with the new things that you have, not just progressing to new areas. Definitely, as soon as you see the map, you're like, okay, this is Metrovania. It's the most. It's basically the Symphony of the Night's map. It's yeah. I think this is good as a Metrovania, but again, anyone that wants to play it just as that and doesn't like the whole turn-based battling monster stuff, well, you're going to struggle if you don't fight the monsters. So, and just play as a platformer, you're not going to be able to get very far. So,
yeah, and I think that's the thing that I find. Again, going on the editing stuff, it's definitely a Metroidvania, and I think I call it sort of like a Pokemon meets Monster Catcher meets Metroidvania. Yeah, the thing about the Metroidvania though, it doesn't feel like that pure Metroidvania that I'm used to, where there's something about the way you move in Metroidvanias. It's so integral to everything you do, and it's just a bit different in this game because part of the upgrades you have happen to your character, and then other ones are the monsters themselves. So it's the combination of those two things. Whereas normally in a Metroidvania, it's your character. It's like you're getting upgraded. Now you can double jump. Now you can wall
yeah,
jump. Now you can do,
but that's the way.
grappling hook or whatever it is.
But that's like Castlevania. Castlevania uses the different things you unlock in the different games, whether or not they're familiars or the
Yeah.
souls in those
Yeah.
games. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
reminded me of that.
Look, and like I said, it's definitely a Metroidvania. I just think if you're a pure Metroidvania fan, it might not click with you. And I don't think it's just the turn-based stuff. It's just something about the game. It feels not tacked on, but it's definitely not tacked on. It's just there's some element of it. It 100% is a Metroidvania. It's just I guess because it's not a pure Metroidvania, it's kind of it's an interesting thing. And I think more games are becoming like that, right? Like we've even sort of had these arguments behind the scenes around Control and Jedi Fallen Order. A lot of people call that a Metroidvania. It's becoming like Dark Souls. You know how the Souls inspired games where they've infiltrated so many games. Like Shovel Knight has components
Oh,
from Dark Souls. So
Dark Souls actually has elements of Metrovania as well. So
yeah, well, yeah, very much so, very much so. So yeah, and I'm just trying to think about the game. The probably the number one thing that I would change if I edited this game is look. I think the difficulty is the number one thing because I think that will really bounce a lot of people off the game. But the other one is I just think the game's too long. Like the way it's structured, I feel like the main campaign, the main story, what you need to get through. I think that just needed to be expedited and let you do the rest of it, like as a post game type thing, rather than I just think the main campaign's way too long in this game, personally.
I'm keen to see how far away I am from reaching, I guess, like the traditional end of the game. I'll to make a judgment on that because so far I don't feel that, but I also have no
Okay.
idea if suddenly there's a reverse castle like Symphony of the Night. You know, like I'll wait, and I'll speak to that next week because I would have played through it by then. So.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was at with the game. I was like playing, I'm like, oh yeah, cool, and then I'm like, oh, I got to go through this now. I'm like, oh my god, like I didn't realize there's more. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you say about it because I felt like, just given what the game is, it felt long. But then I should also say I'm not a big Pokemon fan. The only Pokemon game I've ever played is Red, or Yellow. I think no, I think I played Red. Um, so, and I understand that Pokemon games, the main campaigns are quite long actually. It's like kind of a similar length to this. So, I guess if you're coming from Pokemon, like it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, like just to wrap up the conversation, in terms of who you think this game will appeal to,
Oh, that's a tough one.
it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right?
because I think look, if you love RPGs, like or JRPGs, turn based, and you love Metroidvanias, it's an easy win there, right? But
Yeah.
that's a specific cross section. I don't think everyone that loves Pokemon's going to love this game, but people that are wanting don't feel challenged by the Pokemon games or feel that they don't do enough with the battle systems and they kind of want a bit more, maybe give this a shot because this has that element of, oh, I'm collecting these monsters and I can name them what I want and I can feed them to buff them up and I can evolve them, you know, and things like that. It's not as expensive in that regard as Pokemon, so I don't think there's like hundreds and stuff. But the but then yeah, you want a bit more, then maybe you'll like this as well. For someone like me, that Super Metroid is one of my favorite games, and obviously I'm a huge fan of RPGs. It hit the sweet spot for me. So it's who it's for me. It's for someone like me.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's interesting because I'm not the biggest Pokemon fan. Not against it, and I would actually be really keen to play the next mainline Pokemon game. Because I just feel like hopefully they'll go a little bit harder in that game rather than what they did with Sword and Shield. Like more wild areas, all that kind of stuff. But the one thing I worry about this game is that, you know, unless you are like you're saying, like that Venn diagram, you're like right in the middle. To be honest, I think it does exclude people a little bit. Like if you're just a Metroidvania fan, I think there's probably a lot of elements of the game that you're a bit like, oh my god, this is a bit too deep, all the RPG mechanics and battling mechanics. And then yeah, if you're a casual Pokemon fan, just want to go through and collect the monsters, it's a bit too hard potentially. You know, like there's all these elements that I feel like puts off people with this game, which is kind of an unfortunate thing because I don't think personally this game being hard benefits the game. Like I enjoy it, but I think overall I don't think it really benefits the game. So I would actually love if they did like a 1.1 patch of this game, put in a more casual mode for this game, and then if they were able to tighten up the campaign, like I think it would appeal to a lot more people. And maybe make the drop rates in the easy mode better for people. So then, you know, you're more likely to get monsters that, because, you know, one challenge that you have in this game is you need certain monsters. So for instance, there's a monster that will be able to, you know, like I'm just trying to think of like a more generic one, like hovering, like some of the monsters allow you to like hover, like, and then some hover and then like lift up a little bit. And it's not just like one will do that, there'll be multiple. But I just think, you know, if you're playing through this game and, you know, you're not really hyper aware of this stuff, it's not super obvious, like the way that it plays it out. And I just think, yeah, there's just like a little bit more work in this game that I think would open it up to people rather than how it is, where it's kind of like maybe a little bit limiting to some people. But again, you said that you'd give this 9 out of 10. I gave it 8 out of 10. We both really, really enjoyed the game. I probably think this is a game that I'll keep chipping away at and try to get to 100%, collect all 101 monsters that I know of. I don't know if there's more than that, but as far as I understand, there's 101. And you're going to play it through twice. Are you going to try to collect all the monsters? Is that part of the achievement
that's one of the
completion?
achievements. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're both probably likely. Well, you're definitely likely to. Well, sorry,
Yeah,
you're
you have
definitely
to
going
like
100%
get
it.
unlock all the map and collect all the
Oh, okay.
monsters, and yeah, essentially 100%ing it. So.
Yeah, and probably just the last thing to touch on was actually when I was reviewing this, I got because the early access doesn't have everything that this game had, so I got up to parts of this game where I'm like, oh, I just got to get through this game, and I want to see more of it, and I was like trying to Google stuff, and it's like, there's no one who's spoken about it on the internet. I'm like, oh my god, like I feel like I've gone back to the 90s where you go through guides or something, but it doesn't have where you're up to. And I'm like, oh, I just got to work this out
Yeah,
myself
a lot.
because there's nothing else out
Yeah,
there.
a lot of the and yeah, that's always a unique challenge, especially for what if I want to play a game at launch that's not super big title, but the while as you said, it's like a lot of this is based on early access info. There is a decent wiki that will probably have
Yeah.
some general answers to what you want, but it might not have everything yet.
Yeah, it has a lot of the early game stuff. I think it's really, really rich for the early game, and it's just the later stuff. It starts to get a bit vague because they're probably playing through it as well. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a really cool game. It's a cool community around it. Really recommend playing it. I think it's well worth picking up. It's about $30 Australian. I think it's on sale right now. So I think for that price tag, I don't know about you. Do you think that it's worth that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely worth it. This, other than it being on Game Pass, I also have a feeling this is a game that is like ripe for epic free game, or like it feels like that kind of game that it's gonna be on all those different services at some point.
Yeah, and I would love to see it highlighted on the Switch. Like one thing I would recommend these guys do at some point, or these people, I should say, they should actually put it on like a really deep discount for a short window of time because I think this game is just the type of game you just need eyeballs on it and people will look at it. Like I think the aesthetic is unreal. Like we haven't even mentioned that.
Mm.
The animation, and that was probably the main thing that I wanted to highlight in the review, the written review. The animation is so good, it's so fluid. Like it actually blew me away that this is just two people working on this. It looks better than like 2D games that are built by studios.
Mm.
Like we just had this conversation earlier around ghouls and ghosts
Ghosts
or
and
ghosts and
Goblins.
goblins, ghosts and goblins resurrected. Like put these guys in charge of that. You know what I mean? Like their animation is so much better than what they've done, in my opinion. I think it would look so much better if they did it in that kind of style. So, fantastic game. Really hope that it gets more attention on it because it was a really good, really really good game to play. And I think it speaks volumes that I'm still playing it even though I've reviewed it. So yeah, great game. All right, well let's get into